job then is to set the oven, preheat the oven to 200 degrees centigrade. So I've turned the oven on at the wall. You'll notice that the 12 is flashing on the display. I'm going to press the button underneath to stop the timer, and then we're going to turn this dial here all the way around to 200. You'll notice that an orange light comes on. As soon as the oven's up to heat, that light will go off. So please don't put your cake into the oven until that light is off. My oven on preheating now. Now I've lined my tin with a piece of greaseproof paper. I'm just going to pop that to one side whilst I make the cake. So you'll use a glass or plastic bowl, quite a large bowl. I'm using glass because you can see through it easily. You're going to grab yourself an electric whisk, unplug the plug from here. Just pull your cable out so that it's long enough to reach your nearest socket. And then you need 2 beaters, one of them with a circle on the end, one of them with a hexagon on the end, and then the round beater goes into the round hole and the hexagon beater goes into the hexagon. Now if you try and put it in and it doesn't click in straight away, don't force it, just give it a little turn, and there's some little notches that you need to line up. So I'm going to plug that in now. Turn it on at the wall, just pop that to one side whilst I prepare my eggs. So you're going to use 3 eggs. These are at room temperature. Room temperature's better than them being cold for this purpose. It just helps for the sugar to dissolve a little bit more easily. So we're going to crack those into the bowl. If you do accidentally end up getting a little bit of shell, just use one of your half pieces of the shell. It seems to attract the other bits of shell, and it's quite easy to fish it out with that. So we'll pop that to one side. And then we're going to get our sugar. Now this is 75 grams of sugar, and the type of sugar that we're using is caster sugar. If we look at it up close, it's got quite a small grain, so it dissolves really easily there in the liquid egg. So we're going to switch over now to our whisk. You'll notice that there are some number settings on there, 1 to 4. We're going to start off on just a 1, just until we're comfortable that the ingredients have mixed together, so it doesn't fly out all over the place. We just want to dissolve that sugar into the mixture. And once we're happy everything's mixed, we're going to go up to a 4, and we're going to give it about 2 to 3 minutes. For about 1 minute, you can see it's still really liquid. It's still quite orange in colour. We can see a few air bubbles that we've started to whisk in, but that is much too dark orange and much too watery. So I'm going to whisk it for another minute and then show you what it looks like. Notice as I'm whisking, I'm moving my beaters rather than keeping them just in the middle. I'm whisking all of the mixture. And if we stop and have a look at it now, it's still dripping quite quickly off of the beaters. It's much paler than it was, and the bubbles have become a lot smaller, but it still doesn't look like double whipped cream or shaving foam. So I'm going to keep going for another minute, whisking for about another minute. So I reckon I've been whisking for about 3 minutes now. Now look at the difference. As I lift the beaters out, we're starting to get it peaking on here and not just draining straight off. You'll notice that it's much paler, much thicker, resembling shaving foam almost. We've created a foam essentially because we've got the liquid egg white and yolk, and then we've got the air that we've whisked in, and that's all staying incorporated in there. So that's enough. We've finished now. So we're going to eject the beaters by pressing the button on the top of the whisk. Those can go for washing up. And we're going to really carefully now add our flour. We've got 75 grams of flour going in, and we're not just going to pour it straight in. We're going to take care over it, and we're going to sieve it in. So hopefully your sieve won't touch your mixture. You can tip that in, just rest it on the side of the bowl. And the type of flour that we're using, it's wheat flour, and it's self-raising flour, which means that it's plain flour that's already had baking powder added to it in the factory. And baking powder is a raising agent. It produces carbon dioxide when this goes in the oven, which is going to create some nice air bubbles in there. We've got the air bubbles from the foam that we've just created, but we'll get a bit of extra help from the flour as well to make it even lighter. So we're passing it through the sieve just to add more air in, get rid of any lumps that may be there, and then we're going to change over to a metal spoon. Now, if I put my ear really close to the bowl, I can hear some of the bubbles starting to come out, just like you'll hear the bubbles popping when you step into a bath with bubble bath. We don't want to lose those bubbles. We want to protect them as much as we can. So notice I'm not going back in with the whisk. I'm taking my spoon and I'm just carefully folding the flour in. I'm going to do that carefully until the flour's disappeared. But the reason I'm folding it is that if I whisked it or went in and stirred it, I'm going to knock all of that precious air in that I've just spent all of that time whisking in. So I'm going to keep folding this just until all of the flour's disappeared. Okay, so I've incorporated all of my flour now. In my folding, I noticed that I'm not seeing any flour anymore. So as soon as that's gone, I'm going to stop because I don't want to over mix it and knock that air out. Next, I'm going to take my plastic spatula. I'm just going to scrape the mixture off of my spoon, and then I'm going to bring in my Swiss roll tin, and I'm going to pour the mixture from the bowl into the tin. And I'm going to use the plastic spatula, if you can see, just to scrape around the edge of the bowl, and notice how it gets it beautifully clean. So you're not leaving any mixture in the bowl. Okay. And we do want to be quite delicate with it. If I go in and spread all of this around really violently, I'm going to knock the air out, but it doesn't really self-level. So you will need to just gently tease it into the corners. You can pour it a little bit and it will move, but you might find that the baking paper moves with it. So it's better to just use either your metal spoon or your plastic spatula to spread that into the four corners and level it off, but try and handle it as little as possible. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. This is now going to go into the oven. I'm going to use my oven gloves to place it into the oven. It needs to cook for about 8 to 10 minutes. So on that basis, I'm going to set a timer for 8 minutes and then we'll have a look at it after that. 2 tablespoons of jam into my bowl. I'm just going to place that into the microwave for about 15 seconds. So place it in, close the door, and then turn the dial around so you've just got one dot lit up. That will give you 15 seconds. If you were to go round again, that's 30 seconds, 45, 1 minute, and so on as you go round the dial. The cake was cooking for the first few minutes. I've washed up my plastic spatula and my spoon, so I'm going to need them again in a minute. I've obviously melted my jam, which I'm going to give a little stir with my spoon. I'm just aiming for it to be quite smooth so it's easier to spread on the cake. Then I'm going to take another piece of greaseproof paper. I'm just going to take a pinch of caster sugar really and sprinkle it over the paper. Now if your paper's near the end of the roll and it's trying to curl up, just try turning it over the other way. We want it to be quite flat, and just an even sprinkling of the sugar. What that's going to do is when we turn the cake over onto that in a minute, the sugar's going to stop it from sticking to the paper. Okay, so the timer's just gone off. It's been in for 8 minutes. I'm going to have a really quick check and close the door up. Actually, I can see that's absolutely ready. I'm really happy with that. I'm going to give it a bit of a shake. I can see that there's no wobbling, there's no raw mixture. And if we were to cook it for those extra couple of minutes, I think it would overcook it. So 8 minutes was absolutely perfect. Well, I'm going to turn the oven off now. Right, next job then is just to loosen the cake from the edge of the tin. We're going to do that using a palette knife. What I would suggest that you do is just let your cake cool down for a minute or two before you start handling it, because the metal tin is going to be extremely hot. Now I've chosen to put it on the top of the hob because the hob hasn't been on. Alternatively, you could use your pot stand, you could use your cooling rack. The benefits of using a cooling rack obviously is that it allows the air to go underneath as well, so the cooling process is a little bit quicker. So I'm going to take my palette knife. You'll notice it's not blunt, so it's not going to scratch the tin. And I'm going to carefully just loosen the cake all the way around all 4 edges. I'm sort of pressing the palette knife up against the edge of the tin, so it's a bit fiddly with oven gloves on, just so that it's not stuck anymore. Once I've done that, I'm going to take my tin, and I'm going to do it towards you so you can see. I'm just going to tip my tin upside down onto my paper. Right, if you miss a little bit, just move it along. And then I'm going to lift the Swiss roll tin up, and my cake should be dropped out. Okay, let me know when you're ready. Okay, so I'm ready to take the paper off now. So I've tipped the cake out and I'm going to really carefully peel the paper. Now you might find it sticks a little bit, so be a bit gentle with it. And try not to tear the cake. And then we're going to take our jam, which we've just softened a little bit in the microwave, so it spreads a bit easier basically. And pour that out onto the cake. And then you can use the back of the spoon if you'd like. You could use the palette knife to spread it. Plastic spatula is probably quite good for this job as well. And we're going to try and spread it evenly over the cake without breaking the cake up at all. And you'll notice I've turned it round now, so I've got the short edge facing me, and you'll see why in just a moment. Okay, I'm not going to worry about getting that perfect because it's not very interesting to watch. I probably could have done with a tiny bit more, probably more like 3 tablespoons of jam. We're happy enough with that. What I'm going to do now is to grab the edge of the paper and I'm going to roll it towards me. So the first part of my roll is trying to make sure that this doesn't just fold in half, that it actually rolls. So tuck your first edge over, and I'm just collecting the paper up as it becomes excess. And then once you've kind of got it going, you can just hold on to the edge of the paper, press down gently and roll it and gather the paper up as you roll it towards you, stopping when you get to the end. So you want the seam to be just on the bottom and the weight of the Swiss roll just to keep it all closed. What I then do is to get the paper, wrap it around, and then just leave it to cool completely. There's a slight bit of warmth in that, which means that it's going to remain easy to move. But as it cools down, the shape will set. So we're going to leave that wrapped to one side to cool down while we do all of our washing up. The sponge is completely cold now, so I'm going to unwrap it and you'll put it into your container. I'm just going to put it out onto a plate for you to see. So just unwrap that. Some of the sugar will start to come off, and then you can see it's not going to unroll now because it's set in its shape. If you have a look at the ends, you can see you've got a nice little roll and ready to present.